Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Kareem. In today's video, as the title suggests, I will be talking about 4 books that I recently read that were written by Arab authors. And the reason why I wanted to make this video was because I rarely read books in Arabic. Reading in Arabic has become a bit difficult for me, sadly. But also I realized recently that I rarely read books by Arab authors, and I wanted to remediate that. Also, I sometimes struggle with my Arab identity, and I guess this is my way of trying to stay connected. When I was researching the books that I wanted to read for this video, I naturally gravitated towards books that are set or are written by authors that come from the Levant region, because this is where I originally come from. But also, and that's something I realized only afterwards, all of them were written by female authors, which I think is an interesting unconscious choice from me. So yeah, without further ado, let's just start. The first book that I read is called The Arsonists City, written by Hala Alian, who is a Palestinian-American author. When I read the synopsis, I immediately knew that I wanted to read it for this video. In this novel, we follow the Nasr family, which is composed of a Lebanese father, a Syrian mother, and their 3 kids who were born and raised in the United States. And today, they all live in different parts of the world. And the story starts when Idris, the father, decides to sell the ancestral house in Beirut following his father's recent death. So this leads the entire family to reunite in Beirut for the first time in years to try to stop him. There's also a second timeline, which is set in 60s Damascus, Syria, and Beirut, in which we learn about how Idris and Mesna met and then what led them to immigrate to the United States. I picked up this book because it's exactly the type of stories that I love reading. It's a kind of historical fiction because the Lebanese Civil War plays a very huge role in this story, and I just love reading about family dynamics throughout decades, seeing how someone's upbringing affects their adult life and their relationships, and then how they raise their own kids, how like family dynamics and trauma are passed on. I just find it so fascinating to read about. And also this whole thing of having parents from different countries and then being raised in a different country is something that I personally relate to. So I just felt like I needed to read this book. I love the story that was being told here. It is very character driven, and I think all the main characters are very well written. I loved reading about their individual stories, but also their relationships. I think Hala was able to capture this feeling of being an expat somewhere and having multiple cultural identities so well. This book is about the legacy of war and how it affects not only the generation that lived it, but also the generations that come afterwards. It's about family secrets, family trauma, it's about love and grief, and it's about so many things. However, I have to be honest, I didn't necessarily enjoy the reading experience itself, and that's because I felt like the story dragged on so much. The pacing was very slow, and this is a tiny detail and it may seem unimportant, but the chapters are so long and the writing is so tiny, so sometimes I would read and read and read, but I would feel like I had barely made any progress story-wise, but also, page-wise. So I guess all of this contributed to this feeling. It's a 400-page book, but it felt like 1,000. The other reason why I didn't necessarily enjoy reading this book is because of how much I saw myself and my family in these characters. It was a difficult read, sometimes very emotional. But overall, I enjoyed the story and I am so happy that I read it. The author has another book that is called Salt Lakes, and in it we follow a Palestinian family who was displaced, moves to Kuwait, and then has to move again following the invasion of Kuwait by Iraq. I think this premise sounds so interesting and I really hope I can pick it up soon. The next book that I read is You Exist Too Much by Zaina Arafat. She's also a Palestinian-American author, and this is her debut novel. This story is told in these sort of vignettes that are set in different time periods, but also in different parts of the world. So Jordan, Palestine, Lebanon, and the United States. The main protagonist in this story, who is also the narrator, grew up hiding her queer identity. So when she grows up, her secret longings kind of transform into these reckless romantic obsessions. So we follow her as she deals with all of these encounters and then as she tries to seek help. First of all, I want to say I love the title of this book. Like, You Exist Too Much. That's such a powerful thing to say to someone, but in a bad way. The title drew me in instantly. What did I think of this book? I loved the writing style. Even though the narrator is very unlikable, I enjoyed being in her head and reading her thoughts. She's a very interesting character. I also loved reading about this very damaged mother-daughter relationship. This phrase is something the mother actually tells her. I loved the themes it explored. It's basically about navigating your adulthood while also trying to deal with your childhood trauma and trying to reconcile all the different parts of your identity that sometimes clash because of culture, because of religion. I also liked that it's a bit historical because certain events that actually took place in history are talked about very briefly and just kind of helped to, I guess, ground this book in reality. This person could have existed because the things that she goes through, I think, are not fantastical. However, I was confused with the timeline in this book. We jump back and forth between her childhood, her university days, present time, and these different periods with different lovers, and I feel like this was not handled very well because from the beginning I lost sense of time and I just couldn't figure out where we were in her life and with which lover. But come to think of it, maybe this was a conscious choice by the author to illustrate the inner turmoil of the narrator. I don't know. But yeah, other than that, I really enjoyed it. I'm happy that I read this book, and I would definitely be interested in reading any future novels by Zaina Arafat. The next book you may recognize from my recent book haul video, which if you didn't watch, what are you waiting for? It's a graphic novel. It's called Shubeik Lubeik by Dina Muhammad. She's an Egyptian illustrator, and Shubeik Lubeik basically means your wish is my command. That's what the genie says when he comes out of the bottle. The story is set in Egypt, but in a world where wishes can be bought, and we follow a set of 3 different characters who come in possession of a wish and they are trying to figure out how to best use it. I loved the 3 stories that were told. I loved the themes each story explored, whether it was class and privilege, forgiveness, religion, and even depression. The illustrations in this book are so beautiful to look at. It's mostly in black and white, but I kind of wish that it was done in color because there are a few panels that are colored and they are just breathtaking to look at. Let me just find one for you. Like, come on. Are you kidding me? Regardless of that, I really loved this book and I think this would make a great anthology series where we follow different characters who are seeking a wish. I think this idea has so much potential. So yeah, I'm just putting it out there into the universe. And finally, the last book that I read is the only non-fiction. It is I Killed Scheherazade, Confessions of an Angry Arab Woman by Jumana Haddad, who is a Lebanese poet, journalist, and women's rights activist. This book is sort of a collection of feminist essays where she talks about so many things. The way Arab women are portrayed in the West, her upbringing, her love of literature and reading, different milestones in her life, from writing her first poetry collection to even launching an erotica magazine written in Arabic when she was in her 40s. This book had all the ingredients for me to like it. It's about women's rights in the Middle East. What more do I want? Surprisingly, I did not enjoy it at all. To be fair, there were some parts that I enjoyed, and these were mostly when she was talking about her personal journey. I especially loved the way she talked about how reading has accompanied her throughout her life and completely changed her life and her views. But anything that was more about like women's rights in general, I thought was very pretentious. It just didn't have a lot to say. Nothing original. At least. Felt like she was pitting liberal women against conservative women against Western women, and it just felt like the, I'm not like other girls type of discourse. I didn't like the way she kind of like put herself above other women. Also, this book was written in the early 2010s, so I think personally that it aged very poorly. I was planning on reading this author's other books, but I'm not so sure anymore. So these are the 4 books that I read for this video. There were some common themes between these books, mostly between these 2 where it's all about identity. I hope to make this an ongoing series actually because there are so many other books that I want to read, and I also kind of want to expand geographically, maybe read books by Moroccan authors next. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I made you want to read one of these books. If you have books by Arab authors that you love and that you want to recommend, please feel free to share in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Please do not forget to like and subscribe to help this channel grow, and I will see you in the next one.